right. Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome into the program. This is Green Dot Daily. We are Action Network's daily sports betting show. Brendan Glasheen with you. We are here every weekday starting at noon Eastern, streaming live in the free-to-download, award-winning Action Network app, also live on Action Network's YouTube page. Our show is presented by BetMGM. Use the bonus code ACTION when signing up to get up to $1,000. First Bet Insurance. Terms and conditions apply. Coming up later in the show, Mike Calabrese joins us for a mid-major. This isn't a mid-major minute with Calabrese. He is diving into all things mid-major. A couple of Cinderella teams he likes potentially in March. Also, a spot he likes tonight and a spot he likes tomorrow. And he's still going to go mid-major despite tomorrow being a loaded slate with major teams playing. Also, Nick Giffen, Dr. Nick, exploring the world of NASCAR with us, Daytona 500. Looking forward to that. Giffen standing by. But first, we welcome in Sean Little, who contributes to us here at Action Network. You can find him over at MSG, does things with the Knicks. He's got things covered from a betting standpoint there. Also featured on the Buckets podcast, Action's NBA betting podcast, a couple times a week. All right, so we're looking ahead now to the second half. We'll get to the All-Star Game festivities in Salt Lake City in a few moments, but Sean, I know you like just talking shop about what's going on in the league, who's emerging, who isn't. We'll start in the West because it's hard not to. The West is super fun. It's a great conversation, great fodder. How many teams realistically? Because you get your Denvers, your Memphis, even Sacramento has been a great story. They're at the top of the conference. Then you got those middlers who made moves, and you're like, wait a minute. Those teams are all getting the love to win the conference as far as the odds are concerned, and it's a wait and see, right? We got to actually see it come to fruition and happen. So realistically, in the world of Sean Little, who can come out of the Western Conference?
In the world of Sean Little, where things do get a little wacky. But this is how I feel about the West and the NBA overall. I think there's only three teams that can actually win the West. I know Memphis right now is number 2. They added Luke Kennard. I just don't see those guys being able to actually win a 7-game series against some of these other guys and represent the West in the finals. Right now, I see the Nuggets at plus 350 over at BetMGM, the Clippers at plus 500, and of course, the Suns at plus 230. I do want to talk about the Nuggets for a little bit here. The reason I take the Grizzlies and Memphis out of the equation is because they flat out would need the number 1 seed, in my opinion, to compete. They can't win on the road. They're 11-17. They have trouble when they leave the grindhouse, and they can't essentially try to run people out of the building the way they do in transition and get out on the fast break. Right. The Nuggets are 5 games ahead in the West. They're 27-4. They're not going to relinquish that number 1 spot. That's why I think Memphis doesn't have a chance to win the West. Now, we know about the Nuggets and Jokic. He's the most efficient basketball player we've seen in quite some time. Then we have the Clippers, who are coming. I think one of the underrated additions is Mason Plumlee that they got. They needed more size. They added him. He's going to be able to help them off the bench with rim protection, and he runs the floor. I like the Plumlee addition. And, of course, the Phoenix Suns add possibly the most pure scoring guy, some may say, of all time in Kevin Durant, how efficient he is on offense. I think those are the 3 teams that could win the West. I'm waiting to place a future, but those are the 3 teams I like.
Waiting on Phoenix, that is.
Yeah, of course. I have to see, what that looks like altogether. Yep. I don't think if there's a guy that you could plug anywhere, I think it is Kevin Durant, and at plus 230 right now at BetMGM, they're the favorite to come out of the West now. It's a really interesting spot. I always like to see how teams play together first, though.
Yeah, I mean, look, that is as of right now, would be Clippers as the 4, Phoenix as the 5. That is an unbelievable first round matchup. There's going to be someone in that first round is going to be heartbroken, and it could lead to what you're talking about, just questions about, oh no, are we doing the right things here, or do we need to make a significant change to contend and emerge from the conference? And I think you're spot on about Memphis. We said the same things about this team last year. They're a fun team. When they play their brand, they are fun to watch, but does that brand work in a grinded out series, 2 home, 2 away, same opponent 6 or 7 times? I have my doubts as well, but we'll see. Maybe they turn in a different gear. As it pertains to the East, top heavy, as we know, Boston, Milwaukee, those teams have sort of separated. Where is an angle that you might be able to find in the East, as opposed to a future, because as we just talked about, Boston and Milwaukee, that feels inevitable that it's going to be those two teams at the end. So you might not be as keen to explore the middle of the conference. What's an angle you have for us?
Yeah, Boston's obviously playing great. They've been cruising. Now Milwaukee's won 12 in a row. They haven't lost in the new year with Middleton in the lineup. They're 10-0. I'm looking at the Sixers here. Now, I like how they've been playing ball, but the under 52.5 wins is a play that I'm going to log. You can find it around in different spots, minus 120, minus 130 right now at BetMGM. They have 25 games left. They're 38-19 right now. That means they need to go 15-10 the rest of the way. But they have the toughest remaining schedule in the NBA. They play the Celtics twice. They play the Bucks twice. They play the Nuggets, the Cavs, and the Grizz. And then they have games that are quote unquote the soft guys, but it's Portland. We know Dame can show up anytime and get wins. Even their softer games are tough. I really like this spot to go under 53 wins for the Philadelphia 76ers. I love Embiid. He flat out told you in the press conference earlier going into All-Star weekend that he's not healthy. He's looking forward to getting some time off. We know this team, when they're playing really well at full strength, they're great. And we've seen them play some pretty poor ball as well. I think 53 wins is a tall task for the Philadelphia 76ers with the opponents they have coming up. I would take under 52.5 wins for the Sixers here.
First 6 games out of the break: Memphis, Boston, Miami, all at home. Then they go to Miami, at Dallas, at Milwaukee. Now that is a daunting schedule to come out of the break. Now, the other way you could look at it, you just said you love Embiid. Maybe a hedge play as well. Maybe take a flyer on Embiid to win MVP, or the other option would be to side with your perspective. I think that's why Giannis is an attractive candidate to possibly take it home. All because of what we talked about in the West. If Jokic is going to have tougher games against a more loaded, middling West in terms of those middle teams that are now emerging as favorites, if teams start to get their act together, which that is the key to the West. If these teams get their act together, there are teams you're not going to want to run into. So yes, it's inevitable that Denver probably gets the 1 seed. They have a lead, but if you wanted to have a fade of Jokic, a fade of Embiid because of the schedule and because of your underplay, Giannis might, if it all plays out to what you're saying, Giannis might really emerge as a real contender to win another MVP.
I think people that aren't super locked in like me and you, Brendan, on the NBA, like we get to the All-Star break and people just assume there's 40 games left. There's not that many games left. There's 23, right? 23 games left for the Nuggets. Yep. Yeah. So he the way Jokic has been playing, if he continues to keep it up with the efficiency and they end up getting the number 1 seed in the West, the three-peat looks inevitable.
This is true. So that's a good counterpoint. There's not enough of
There's just not a lot of runway left. Right.
Right. That's a very fair point. That is a good call. On to the All-Star game this weekend. We've got the festivities leading up. You've got to play, and you want to focus on the 3-point contest. Are you going to your boy Julius Randle? Give it.
Hey man, Julius Randle was getting some flack for getting added to the contest, but he's been knocking down a lot of threes. Top 10 in the NBA in 3-point makes. I want to say he's number 7 or 8 on that list. He's been shooting the ball pretty well, getting off to a really good start in the first quarter. But
I witnessed that firsthand. I went to Boston Knicks a few weeks ago. It was a Thursday TNT game, and Jalen Brunson's getting to the hole, and Julius Randle. I mean, it's got to be it's quite an experience, I would imagine, as a Knicks fan, as a Knicks someone who covers the Knicks, and you're on a Knicks network. Julius Randle, good for him, but he loves to chuck. He loves to get up that jumper.
He gets him up, no doubt about it. Julius gets his shots up, and even now, throughout he's proven that he can knock down the 3. He still gets a ton of space. I think that's why he gets him up a ton. But yes, I'm looking at 3-point contest. This is my favorite All-Star event. There's no judging involved with the dunk contest. The dunk contest gets all the love, but the 3-point piece for me shows a good skill, and you don't have to worry about anybody judging. I'm looking at guys that don't take a lot of energy when they get these shots up. You're shooting a lot of buckets, a lot of balls in a row. You don't want to be using a lot of energy. Like a guy like Kevin Huerter is going to full jump shot and use a lot of energy. So I'm looking at Dame Lillard at plus 425. He has a super compact release when it comes to the 3-point contest. He's the favorite up there. And then Tyrese Halliburton, another guy, doesn't use a lot of energy, almost like a flat-footed push shot at plus 650 to win the 3-point contest. Those two guys are who I'll be wagering on. Anybody could get hot in this structure and how they do it. I'm looking forward to it. That's my favorite All-Star weekend festivity.
If anything for Julius Randle, what he has going for him is Karl Anthony Towns won the contest last year. Now, I think he's a better shooter, but as far as, he fits that mold of the big guy. But yeah, Julius is often, when he's taking those threes, it's often in stride, coming off his own dribble. That's not a thing in this contest. You're right. Taking a ball off a rack and you're firing. So the analysis makes sense. Sean, enjoy the weekend. I'm assuming you get a little, you do. You get a little break from the association as far as the actual games, and we look forward to more on the Buckets podcast in the second half.
Glasheen, always a pleasure, brother.
All right. Talk to you again soon. On to college basketball. We are through Thursday, on to Friday, of course, and many of these teams you see on your screen, they were in action last night, or in some cases will be in action tomorrow. None of these teams playing on Friday, but here's your updated list. Purdue losing last night to Maryland in some wacky way. The Terps just figured it out. They got their ish together. And then Kansas, St. Mary's, who was in action last night as well. UConn, Texas, Gonzaga, Houston with a victory last night on the road. So let's look at Friday's slate, shall we? Mid-major galore. And we welcome in Mike Calabrese, who joins us. So when we get to mid-majors, of course, we're projecting what? Be a 12 seed, some 13 seeds. Do we get the St. Peter's Peacocks angle again this year? We're at 15 upsets of 2, etc. Who do you like in the mid-major market right now to make a run in March?
Well, I think there's a couple mid-majors to really like, and also it's balanced out by the fact that the top teams, the 1, 2, 3 seeds, those lines, it's just a total mess. Who can you trust at this point? The answer is nobody. In my opinion, we're headed for a 2007 college football version in college hoops, where there's absolutely no team to trust at the very top of the polls. So you got to start talking yourself into some of those potential 14, 15 seeds. I have a team that is a true mid-major because they've never gone dancing. How about the Youngstown State Penguins? This is one of the highest scoring teams in the entire country, averaging just shy of 82 points per game. They can really shoot the basketball, 11th in shooting efficiency, all the way up to 31st in Ken Palm's offensive efficiency metric. And they do it with a balanced attack, 4 scorers averaging 13 points or more per game, led by Dwayne Cohill. Remember that name. If they end up punching their ticket, he averages 18 points per game, but he shoots 48% from three-point range. So he could be somebody who could ruin, a Kansas, a Texas, somebody on that 2 lines very first weekend in March Madness.
They're giving me like South Dakota Jackrabbit vibe, South Dakota State, like they gave Providence a run for their money in the first round last year, but right, matchup dependent. If they can draw someone who is just kind of lucky or happy to have a 3 or 4 seed, who's to say? How about in the WCC, you have another team that you like?
So the WCC technically is a mid-major conference. Right. Obviously, Gonzaga has punched so many tickets and been a 1 or a 2 seed so many times that it's kind of a mid-major in name only. But when you look at the other teams there, I think it's fair to say that they are mid-majors, and they're still priced in the futures market that way. St. Mary's may be all the way up to the 4 or 5 line, depending on bracket matrix or some of the projections you're looking at. But they're still 40-1 to win the national title. So in my opinion, they're still game to be called a mid-major. And it's perfect lining them up against Youngstown State because they're the opposite. They want to play at a snail's pace. They play at the 348th slowest pace in all of college basketball. So they want to turn it into that very slow half-court grinder kind of March Madness game that a lot of us have become accustomed to over the years because they can rely on a defense that allows less than 60 points per game. It's actually 58.5 per game. That's 4th nationally. And they make it really, really difficult to share the basketball and get open looks. They're second in assist to made basket ratio in college basketball. So what that essentially boils down to is a lot of solo one-on-one basketball in the half court, and that plays right into their hands. And then finally, Aiden Mahaney, their star freshman, they got to be able to score some points. He's averaging 15 points per game. He's got a game winner on his resume this year already, shooting 40% from three-point range. And it's so rare. I love these stories when a kid turns down major offers. He had 3 Pac-12 offers, including one from Arizona. He didn't want to ride the bench for the year. He didn't want to be a 6-man. He wanted to be the star, and that's exactly what he's doing for St. Mary's this season.
This kid, folks, if you didn't see the game that he had against Gonzaga, the way he played in that fourth quarter or second half and that overtime, wow. That was fun stuff. And it was a game in which St. Mary's was just, they were hanging around, down 8, down 10. They would just cut it to 7, cut it to 5, and then this guy was he was magnificent. So I hear you on St. Mary's. That kid, if they make a run in March, I get to learn the name, Aiden Mahaney. Okay, while we have you here, let's look at the Friday slate. We're gonna find something that we can sink our teeth into on this slate. In the Ivy League, Dartmouth and Cornell, Big Red favored by 9.5 points. They're getting the love. Iona hosting Manhattan, little New York battle there. 80% of the bets on Iona. Dayton and Loyola Chicago. Their overall record isn't great, but they're in a spot where they're home dogs. That's interesting because Loyola coming off a nice win at UMass on the road last time out. Okay, you don't have to go to that board, Calabrese, but give us a pick for tonight that you like.
There's a lot of flawed teams on that board, so I'm just going to go for something fun. You deserve something fun. It's been a long week. Switch on over to ESPNU and join me for Horizon League over 148.5 between Wright State and Cleveland State. Last time these two teams played, it ended with 162 total points. And the Raiders come in red hot, winners of 5 of 6. Trey Calvin, talk about another potential March darling. He has the green light to shoot 30 shots per game. He's averaging, close to 20 per game. The Raiders as a team are 20th in scoring nationally. And my favorite for an over takes 2 to tango. 279th in points allowed, 7th in shooting percentage for Wright State, 243rd in 2-point percentage defense. And they're going to go ahead and speed it up. They're top 20 in every pace metric. And the last time they played, Cleveland State, even though they're not, a fast team, they were happy to play at a faster rate because they could just go by a really lousy Wright State defense. The other thing that's interesting, when you look at these two teams just in Horizon League play, when you match up their totals for the year, over is paid out 23 times out of 32 opportunities. That's 72% hit rate. That's enough for me. And then finally, they're blowing past these closing totals. Wright State has gone over in Horizon League play by over 10 points per game, and Cleveland State at 9.8 points per game. So when you look at that, they're both top 15 nationally in conference games playing to the over. So let's go ahead and have some fun on a Friday night.
All right, over the horizon on a Friday night. Love it. Okay, Saturday. This warms my heart. Tanner probably too. Tanner McGrath, if he's listening somewhere. You're going to the America East, and you like the Catamounts tomorrow against NJIT.
It's no surprise UVM has been the class of the America East for years. They're 23-10 against the spread in conference play the last 2 years. And it took a little bit of time for them to gel. Dylan Penn comes in, running the point guard. Finn Sullivan has elevated his play down the stretch. And at this point now in conference play, and I like to be able to pull the stats out from the year-long look and just look at conference play. Vermont's second in offensive efficiency in the AE, and they lead the conference in defensive efficiency. Now, NJIT has been a pretty pesky home team when playing in Newark, but at this point, I think the difference in this game is going to be the turnover margin. Not only does Vermont turn you over, but they never turn the ball over. And for that reason, they're plus 4.5 on the turnover margin per game in conference play. I think that'll be the difference, helping them, run away with this game in the second half.
Yeah, they're starting to catch fire, and they, as you know, speaking of the WCC, they played some really hard non-conference games. So their overall record, which is better now because they've just been hot in the conference, they have started to turn a corner and figure it out. But that was the whole point. That's why you play those hard non-con schedules to get ready for this time of year. Vermont has won 8 in a row. Mike Calabrese, enjoy the games tonight. Enjoy them tomorrow. And really happy to have college basketball taking the world by storm this weekend. NBA All-Star break, no NFL. Should be a good weekend.
I believe Stuckey said on the podcast something like in the last 60 years, there's never been more losses by the number 1 team in the AP poll than we already have at this point in mid-February. So strap in for some craziness down the stretch.
All right. Thanks, pal. It's not just college basketball taking the world by storm this weekend. The Daytona 500 NASCAR season is here. Here are your outright winner odds on BetMGM right now. Denny Hamlin is your front runner. Elliott, Logano, Blaney, and on the list goes. We welcome in our NASCAR aficionado, Nick Giffen, to Green Dot Daily to get us ready for the weekend. All right, Nick, first off, I know, and you've been doing the pod too. The pod has been excellent. That was a good start to the week to get us excited here. Tell the people where else they can find you this week as it pertains to getting ready for Daytona 500.
Oh yeah, all over the place. We're going to be doing a Q&A in the Action Network Discord at 6 p.m. Eastern time today. So get ready with your questions about betting the Daytona 500. You mentioned the Running Hot podcast. Also, I will have for those who play daily fantasy, my projections will be up over at Fantasy Labs and articles over there at Fantasy Labs. And then obviously articles on Action Network and all my picks tracked in the Action app. So we're going to have a whole bunch of stuff for you here coming up for the Daytona 500.
So before you give us the picks, just if you don't mind, just in case someone's new to this and they're like, maybe me, what's your biggest piece of advice when it comes to NASCAR? Because folks might look at it and go, all right, what do I do?
Yeah, I think a lot of people will bet based off of names, and we don't want to do that. NASCAR, even just as a whole in general, has so many different tracks, track types, and different drivers are suited to different driving styles, and that makes them better at certain tracks or the other. And also certain teams like Joe Gibbs Racing or Rick Hendrick Motorsports, they will have car setups that are better for certain tracks than others. So part of betting NASCAR is, just trying to figure out where those driver and car combinations work the best at each track. And then if the books aren't adjusting enough, that's where you can pounce.
You mentioned names. If like Dom Toretto was ever available for one of these, I would just bet on Dom Toretto, because I'm a big fast guy. But anywho, on to the picks. You got a couple for us. Give us your first one for Daytona 500.
Yeah, so we like to look at who's going to win the Daytona 500 or who's going to finish in the top 10. Well, I got a little bit of a different market here. I'm going to go with Christopher Bell to finish as the top Toyota driver. You can get that at plus 600 at BetMGM. What I really like about this is, so there's a whole bunch of Fords, there's a whole bunch of Chevys, but there's only 7 Toyota drivers in this race. So 1 in 7 chance is equal to plus 600 odds. So if he was just the average Toyota driver, this would be a fair value bet. But 2 of the Toyota drivers are rookies. One of them, Travis Pastrana, right, comes from motocross and rally cars and X Games and all that stuff. Making his Daytona 500, his NASCAR Cup Series debut. So I think he's very low on the pecking order to finish as top Toyota. And then Ty Gibbs is a rookie as well, and he hasn't really shown a lot of strength in the few Cup races he has run. And even last night in his duel, he lost the draft at one point. So that wasn't very good. Martin Truex Jr., while a NASCAR champion, has never been one to really win races at super speedways. He's over 71 in his career. Wow. And last night, Christopher Bell almost won his dual qualifying race. He lost by mere feet, a couple feet to Joey Logano. So I have Christopher Bell finishing 17.4% of the time as the top Toyota. So that's a little bit better than 5-1. So I would bet this down to plus 500.
Okay, so you have top Toyota pick. How about you're going to go to another model that you'd like to side? And there's a couple angles to this that you have coming up.
Yeah. So the first one of these two, and I think this is the one that people have been talking about, Todd Gilliland to finish as the top Ford at 28-1 at BetMGM. It was 40-1 last night. I wake up this morning, it's 28-1. I actually wrote him up earlier in the week at 55-1. So he's come down very far. And a lot of that is because of how he ran in his dual qualifying race last night. He was leading going into the last lap. And for those of you who are maybe new to Daytona, there's something called the bump draft where you hit the car in front of you to make him go faster. And then you go faster because you're in the draft. Well, he got bumped a little too hard and had to wiggle and save his car, and he made a great save, but unfortunately that cost him the win in his dual qualifying race. But he also just runs really well at these super speedways. He ran inside the top 15 in over 70% of the laps in last year's Daytona 500, and he ran inside the top 15 in over half of the laps in 3 of the 4 super speedway races. So he doesn't need to finish first. He just needs to finish as the top Ford. So when you're running inside the top 15, inside the top 10 for a lot of the race, there's a good chance you're going to finish there as well. And if you do, you have a good shot to finish as the top Ford driver. So my model actually has him plus 1850 is fair value. So even at 28-1, there's still some value here. I could see betting this down to maybe about 25 or 22-1.
What I'm gathering also is you're getting edges based on it's a lot of numbers plays here. So, and that's the same what you'll do for this next pick, sort of as a hedge.
Yeah, exactly. And in NASCAR, we're not always, but pretty much always taking longer odds. Even if it's like to win the race, like plus 500 at some tracks, it's still a 5-1 bet. So you're only going to win it 1 out of 6 times. So Daytona, especially when you're betting against multiple drivers because of how random it is and how much the draft plays in effect where almost anybody can win, these bets are going to be very long odds. We're not going to expect to win them. We're just trying to make value bets. And that's what we're doing here with Eric Almirola, top Ford driver as well. 12-1 at BetMGM. Eric Almirola is a two-time winner at super speedways. In 48 career super speedway races, he's won twice. So that would be about 24-1 odds or so just to win the race. Well, we're not betting him to win the race. We're betting him just to finish as the top Ford, which isn't even half the cars. So math says, if he should be about 24-1 to win the race, then 12-1 as top Ford is a very good bet. At Daytona in the 500 in 2018, he was leading the Daytona 500 going into the last lap. When we talk about that bump draft, it was kind of a little bit of a block, kind of a bump draft, but Austin Dillon spun him out going into the last turn to win the 2018 Daytona 500 while Almirola was leading. Last night, he did win his dual qualifying race, and he had a fantastic car. Drivers, PJ Walsh for Action Network wrote up, that Kyle Larson was saying he loved working with Eric Almirola because Eric Almirola was such a good pusher in the draft. And if you're a good pusher, people are going to work with you, and then you can slingshot him right at the finish line there to try to win the race. So I think Eric Almirola has a great chance to win this race, and especially to finish as the top Ford driver. It's going to be hard to beat those Penske boys, Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano, but he definitely can do it. My model has him finishing top Ford at 9%. So that's about 10-1 fair value. So I would still bet him at plus 1,200, maybe plus 1,100, but I wouldn't go all the way down to plus 10 just to allow for a little wiggle room in case my model's a little too high on him or something like that.
All right, you can catch Nick Giffen tonight, Action Network Discord, 6 p.m. Eastern time for a Daytona 500 betting Q&A. Also, the Running Hot podcast is available wherever you get your podcast. Check it out. Best bets, and Giffen explores the racetrack with you on Running Hot. Nick, thanks for the time.
Absolutely. Enjoy the Great American Race.
All righty. Good stuff from Nick Giffen. Picks from today's show, including Nick's, as well as Sean Little, looking ahead to the NBA second half, also All-Star Weekend, and also Mike Calabrese with some edges in college basketball picks he likes. All can be found at Green Dot Daily in the Action Network app. Free to download, follow the show. Show pops up while you watch. You can log picks. It's great. Green Dot Daily is presented by BetMGM. You can use the bonus code ACTION when signing up to get up to $1,000 first bet insurance. Terms and conditions apply. All right, that's it. That's the week, everybody. Hope you all had a great week. Have a great weekend. Be sure to follow us. Again, you can find the picks at Green Dot Daily. We are back on Monday at noon Eastern. Plenty to get to. Also, be sure to check out BBOC, Big Bets on Campus, tomorrow morning, 10:30 a.m. Eastern time. The guys, the three-man weave crew with Stuckey, they'll be going through the big games in college basketball. And also, NBA All-Star Weekend best bets are also available over on the Action Network podcast. So some things you can take a look at for the weekend. Like I said, we're back Monday at noon. For all of our guests today, crew behind the scenes, Brendan Glass, Sheen, thanks for watching Green Dot Daily. You have a great weekend.